And so, just as an FYI, there's 11 people in the audience, so, and then Mike Ray.
I'm here.
Yeah, okay, we can hear you, Mike, so, all right. Right on.
Okay, this is a meeting for the Board of Registrars. We held an impromptu one about a week or so ago, so this is the one that we have posted and we'll talk about what we spoke before. The registrars are James Davis, Donna Lovegrove, Michael Ray is online, and Donna McCoy.
We'd like to start all this meeting to order to discuss the annual town election as far as opting out or vote by mail, early voting, or opt in, or in-person early voting for municipal elections, which would be the town. Donna, would you like to, anyone second that?
I'll second that.
Second this start of this meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. The one before the select board,
So, do you want to take public comment or open mic or?
sure, yes, thank you for reminding me. We'll have open mic, we'll let people have 3 minutes to speak.
And then. Does anybody have their hands raised? It does not look like anybody has their hands raised, but there are people, there we are. Okay. Mary Leach, you're in the meeting and you can speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. I just want to say that I would encourage us to vote yes on both early voting and also mail-in voting. I think that with local elections, we have a hard enough time getting people to participate. And I think that anything that we can do, even if is a good investment. Both early voting and mail-in voting will help with accessibility issues, giving flexibility. People won't feel like they need to come up with an excuse as to why they have to have an absentee ballot. I think it has the potential for increasing our voter turnout. And as I said, because of the local elections having traditionally low turnouts, I think anything we can do can encourage that. Another reason I'd like to bring forward is because of public health concerns. Right, I work in a hospital system. Right now, flu is running rampant, and I think that there might be some more vulnerable people in our population as residents who feel like they don't want to go into an office and vote because they don't want to put themselves or someone who's vulnerable living at home at risk. I think that also it shows that Billerica is a community that values voting and wants to have increased voter engagement. And also, I think that anything we can do to help make voting more accessible for our residents of Billerica is something that I think that I would support strongly. And I think that if you were to ask the residents, they would too. So thank you very much. And I encourage you to please consider accepting voting yes on both of those agenda items. Thanks.
Next.
Ken Glasser, you are in the meeting. You just have to unmute yourself.
Yep, just done. Thank you, Clancy, and thank you, everybody. It shows Apex because that's my nonprofit account I have for I volunteer with. So I just wanted to quickly just give you my opinion on this. After listening to the concerns and then evaluating it, 2,600 voters actually used this option last time. So everyone that's getting elected, 2,600 voters used it last time that would like to probably, most of them, continue to do that. The 5K cost, which was brought up a couple of times for this, is 2/1000ths of 1% of the budget. So just pointing that out that, the cost was brought up. I get that 5K people requested mail-in ballots and only 2,600, 50% mailed them in, but it's still 2,600 voters who voted that might not have voted. And people brought up, well, it's, it's very low participation in the town elections and blah, 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 10%, 14%, whatever. 2,600 mail-in voters is a significant percentage of the votes if we're saying it's low, and we are, low participation. So that's another reason. I get that absentee voting is still there. People brought that up. But you have to meet 3 specific conditions according to the state website, or you can't use those. We're not going to convince people on one side that mail-in voting is accurate or not accurate. That shouldn't be the issue here. I don't think there's been any fraud that I know of in Billerica in our own town. So this shouldn't be a concern in Billerica for local elections. It's relatively low cost. I also would say, somebody said, well, it's a lot of extra work. Well, it's a lot of extra work for all of the towns in Massachusetts. And maybe there should be more volunteers or more staff. But I mean, somebody even flippantly said on social media, well, what if we didn't have an election at all? We'd save even more money. So, if you're trying to encourage more participation of voters, it's a very relatively small expense to do that. And I've had a lot of people in my precinct calling me saying, overwhelmingly in one direction, we really need this. We would really like this. So I would urge you guys to please allow this. I know there are 2 thoughts on this, but I really think it's safe and it's helpful. If we can get another 2,600 voters to vote, that is not something we should discount at all. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate you listening.
Thank you.
Could I just interject something here? This isn't our decision to make.
No, it's the select.
I don't know
boards.
why he's appealing to us. We don't make that decision on whether we're gonna,
I think they think that I'm suppressing voting. And that's not the issue.
no,
We can listen to the rest of them and then I'll explain
okay.
my theory.
Okay.
Next,
Deanna, you are allowed to talk. You just have to unmute yourself. Deanna, you just have to unmute yourself.
are you there, Dion? Mhm.
Carol, talking is permitted. You just have to unmute yourself.
I think I'm unmuted now. Carol
Yep.
Reardon, Precinct 9. I can't wait to hear what the reasoning is for this board to vote against or for. If you're not here to do that, maybe we could get an explanation of what it is you're doing, because I listened to the presentation at Select Board. And first, it sounded like it was not going to be, it seemed like we were being hooked with the cost, which I didn't understand, because if it costs a certain amount, it's going to cost the same amount next time. And I would hope that we're not planning on not allowing mail-in voting next time. The other argument is bodies on the floor. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I don't know if the Registrars board knows this, but we have a brand new league of Billerica League of Women's Voters. Voting is a big concern for the league. We would gladly train people. We would gladly put bodies on the floor, and we will be getting more involved with this board. So I'm glad to call in today. I can't wait to see which board members are active on the floor during voting time. And this is a no-brainer. We need accessibility for voting. We need people to be able to vote. We have been involved in mailing voting in the past. Why this election is different, I don't know. Can't wait to hear the reasons why, if they're different than what you presented at the Select Board. Thank you.
If anybody else?
Zoom user, you just have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me, Clancy?
Yes.
This is Darlene Torrey, Precinct 2. I just wanted to offer my opinion of not allowing mail-in voting, even if it is only a few people who use it. I think anytime that we don't allow people to exercise their right to vote is a really bad thing. We continually say voter turnout is low, voter turnout is low, but here we are taking away an avenue for people to come out and vote, or well, mail in their vote. But it's just another way. You know, I think I even recently heard on one of the talk shows that the town had that we need to get people more involved in the town, and we need to get people more involved in what happens in the process, and to not allow people to use mail-in voting is just another way hindering the process. So I would be against this, and I think that we should allow mail-in voting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brenda, you are permitted to speak. You just have to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Brenda Risher. I listened to the select board meeting when they were talking about this, and what I got out of it was that a lot of it seemed to be about the cost and the turnout. And I didn't hear anything. I didn't really hear anyone say that was what the focus was, and not many people do it. And if we do early voting, but two things. I also work in the hospital system, and COVID is rampant again. I know we're not living in the COVID days, but there are a lot of elderly people in Billerica, or compromised people in Billerica, that really do care about the town. You know, we have definitely seen some change in our town, and I think people are liking it. And I think we should, for that cost, to take that away for 2,600 votes, that's a no-brainer, when there seems to be big, long discussions about things that we already know are laws, and certain members want to send to legal to get another opinion on, to change the mind. So to me, it just seems like it is, you know, for 5,000, even if it is $5,000, that's nothing, you know. And most of the people that really care, you know, they've been here for a long time, and people are liking the change. So that's all I wanted to say. And I listened, and I heard it was mostly about the cost, and it kind of seemed like it was already a done deal, and this is just what we're presenting, like we're not going to do it. So that's all. Thank you.
We'll try it again one more time.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you this time.
All right. I listened to the select board's meeting also, and what I believe was presented
Who
from
is
the
this
town.
person?
Excuse
Could
me?
you say the name and your precinct, please?
Oh, Diana Saunders, Precinct 2.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I listened to the select board's meeting. It was presented at the Board of Registrars. There was 3 people, Mike Ray, somebody else, and the town clerk. And Mr. Lover wasn't at that meeting, that you guys voted for doing away with mail-in voting. And now you're saying that it's up to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen voted to do away with it. I believe it was like 4-1. And because they were told that the Board of Registrars wanted to get rid of it, the mail-in voting and the early voting. So I have to say I'm confused, because either you guys met a couple of weeks ago and you took a vote, and this meeting is just people are calling in because they do not agree with your vote to get rid of the mail-in voting. I myself don't want to get rid of the mail-in vote, because I have kids that are in college who their ballots get mailed to them, and then they mail their ballots back so they can vote, because that's their right to vote. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Um,
No more hands raised now.
okay. A little background on the vote by mail. Last year, the Secretary of State decided to send out postcards to every registered voter in the Commonwealth. If you chose all elections, it was up to the towns to decide if they were going to also include local. I did that. There's over 32,000 registered voters in Billerica. My thought process was I did not want to send out 32,000 postcards to see who wanted to vote by mail and who didn't. You can certainly still vote by mail. I'm not suppressing that. You can go on the Secretary of State's website, download the application and mail it in. My thought process was just doing away with what the state did last year and mail out a postcard to every resident. If anybody's got questions on that, I'll be happy to answer it.
Do you want me to? Do you want me to take this question?
Sure.
Hi, Carol, Precinct 9 again. I'm just curious how you let all the people that assumed, right? So they filled something out. This sounds a lot like a mass health application to me. You get one every 3 months if you're laid off. It's insanity. So wouldn't you assume that if somebody got their postcard and they click the all, that they're assuming they're going to get a mail-in ballot now? So I'm just curious, before you decided to do this, how, I know we're backtracking, and this is what you look at, the elephant in the room here is we're backtracking right now to cover what happened. So how did you let all these mail-in people know that this is what you were going to do? Because they're just assuming they're going to get one of these in the mail, irregardless. They probably have no idea this meeting's taking place right now. Those of us online tried very hard to get the word out. But how'd you let all those people that assume they're getting a mail-in ballot for a local election know that this is what you're doing? That's my question.
All right. Last year, I had nothing to do with the vote by mail cards. That was state issued. The state will send them out when there's a state and a federal election. They leave it to the towns, as I said, to opt in and also include local. I did, as well as probably a number of other towns. We were mailing ballots anyway. It wasn't a big deal to us. This year, the state is not going to mail out the postcards. So I took it to mean that we as a town would send postcards to the registered voters and give them the option. I'm not the state mandates it. It doesn't mandate for the towns to send out a postcard to ask if you want to vote by mail. You can still vote by mail. As I said, you just go on the Secretary of State's website, download the application and mail it in. The last day I'll accept them is March 31st. You need to have at least a week for the ballot to go out to you and you to do what you need to do and then get it back to me. The ballot kit, if any of you have ever gotten one, isn't just a simple piece of paper in an envelope. I know it's been mentioned out there on social media that they don't believe the cost of what the mailing is. A packet for a mail-in ballot is an outside envelope, a white inside envelope to mail that ballot back, a manila envelope for the ballot to go in. The ballot, which is usually legal size, folded into 4, and then there's an instruction sheet. So it's quite a substantial little envelope. It does cost more than a regular one stamper. And last year, the postage rates went up. We paid one. In the beginning, it was 97 cents. When we sent out the state and we sent out the presidential in November, it was $1.01 per package. And every one that we sent out, that's what it cost. And we didn't get half of those back. So I should have been more clear at the selectmen's meeting. That was my mistake. I will know from this point forward. So when we go back to the selectmen,
Do you want to take the next person, or,
is there somebody with a hand up?
multiple people? Do you want me to take them, or?
What do you think? Should we answer any more questions or?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Right. Mike, do you have anything to say?
No, I think we've made it very clear. It's not our decision, it's our recommendation. And the selectmen can feel free to do whatever they want. We were just trying to save a couple of bucks for the taxpayers who are already overburdened with all kinds of things. So it's simply a recommendation, and I think we should proceed with the vote.
Okay. So I guess to be clear, we're voting on not mailing out postcards to every resident in town, but they still have the option to vote by mail.
Right,
They have that, they have absentee ballots, and we're also holding early voting that the selectmen voted on. If anyone has questions, I encourage them highly to call my office or stop in. I'm more than happy to talk to you instead of watching social media and getting misinformation. I'm there every day. I have an open door policy. You have a question, I'm more than happy to answer it. Donald, do you have anything to say?
Excuse me?
Do you have anything to say?
But part of it, the thing that I don't really understand is why are we involved in this at all? In other words, it goes back to the question that Jim asked. It seems to me that generally our duties have to do with who is allowed to vote, and generally that power is less and less in our hands because the fact they're dictated by law. And the other has to do with if there is a dispute over an election, who has actually won. And I've actually been involved. I've been at this position for 25 to 30 years, and I've been involved in a couple of recounts. But I don't recall ever being involved in the decision as to what the format of the voting will be or anything else. So I'm really confused as to why I'm here.
Right.
And
Well, the
is there
state,
an answer to that? And have we suddenly gained a job that we didn't have before?
it appears that way. That's how I
And
look at it.
how did that happen? Did the board of selectmen say the board of
Well,
we're
no,
now
I
going
think
to make that decision?
this all came about, I believe, after COVID,
right,
when they went for mailing ballots.
Yes, I understand that.
And this is an extension of that.
mhm,
Now, is it worth it to do this financially? Probably not. But if the town decides to send them out, then they'll be sent out. But it's something that it's really not our purview to take care of this. To do this other than to recommend,
right, we present it to the select board and they make the
Right.
final decision,
right? We come up with the figures of what it costs basically,
right?
and how many we receive back from what we sent out.
Mhm. Right,
And that's it. It's up to the selectmen now to decide what they would like to do, and they have a meeting to do that, to decide that. And we follow their instructions.
right. So,
So I think that kind of answers your question that one thing stepped upon the other and here we are. So if there's no other questions on this, I'd like to conclude this meeting and
okay,
Don.
Okay, no, I had a second
Oh.
part to my question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That had to do with, are these two issues Are they interconnected? In other words, it seems to me the issue of early voting is quite a different issue from the issue of are we going to mail out this and have people mailing in?
Right?
In other words, they're two different issues. It seems to me that if we're suddenly gonna get involved in the financing of this, what I'd like to know is, what does it cost? In other words, I've always believed that we should make things easier, and I've never understood why we had to justify an absentee ballot. In other words,
Right, well, that's state mandated.
I mean, you almost had to have an excuse to have an absentee ballot, and I never believed in that. It seemed to me that if a person was willing to go through the mechanism of the absentee ballot,
Back
he
in the
didn't
day,
have
that's the
to
way it was.
explain to the town why he was doing that. So, I've always been a believer that one could do that. But I've never been a believer that we had to take all the work out of for the person doing it. So, and if we're involved in these decision things, I'd really like to know, what does it cost to do one versus the other? Because it seems to me that essentially giving a person the right to vote early or whatever is probably cheaper than all this mailing and all this kind of thing. So it almost seems as if all of a sudden we're being asked to make a decision on things that we've never done before. And since it involves money, we don't even know what it costs, do we? You probably know, but I certainly don't.
Right. There's a difference between the early voting and this vote by mail. Early voting we hold in the auditorium. So that's already been approved. That's gonna be March 1st, April 1st, and April 2nd.
So that's
That's
not a part of this decision at all.
This is voting by mail.
Okay, this is only voting by mail.
Correct.
Okay.
So we're not suppressing a person's right to vote by mail. My theory was I did not want to send out postcards to every registered voter like the state did. The state has the money for this. The state doesn't pay us back for this. This comes out of our town's funds. So when people can actually still vote by mail, we don't need to mail out the postcards. They just go online, download the application, mail it in. We make up a packet, we mail it to them.
Absentee has always been there and will continue.
There will be. And I didn't go before the selectmen to ask for future elections blocking it, which has been posted out there on social media as well. Every year when I go before the selectmen, it is for that year. It doesn't look into the future. It's time sensitive.
That's correct, because things change from year to year.
Right, and the state laws change.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
if I may, I'd like to suggest that town clerk tell us her recommendation and we take a vote on it to reaffirm what we've already done, but at least it'll be on the record this time for anybody who wants to see it.
Okay. I make a recommendation that we bypass the mailing postcards to all the residents because that's an option for us. And just do the vote by mail. And I think that's where the misunderstanding was. So I recommend we not go through with mailing everybody a postcard, but they will be able to vote by mail.
I second that recommendation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Anything else, Mike?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Anything? You?
No.
No?
I think we've kind of covered.
I
Okay.
move we adjourn.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned at 4:46.